This is the CineSnob Podcast.
Oh, welcome to episode 266 of the CineSnob Podcast. I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Villafana.
And Cody, your hat says it all.
It does.
Spurs. The San Antonio Spurs won again the NBA draft lottery.
Yeah.
Super exciting time for Spurs fans. I was watching a movie that we're going to cover next week. Mm-hmm. It was in a screening. I knew the draft lottery was happening, obviously, and I normally don't do this. I'm normally a good citizen in the theater, but it was just a press screening, and it was completely empty of anybody else. But it was. I set my alerts on my phone to go off. Mm-hmm. I set ESPN to alert me, and let's just say in the middle of a signature song in the movie that we're talking about, it's The Little Mermaid. We'll just talk about it's The Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
In the middle of Part of Your World, mm-hmm. I get a buzz on my phone that says, or a buzz on my watch that says the Spurs won the draft lottery.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I look down. And it's like, wish I could be part of, oh, shit. And I literally said, oh, shit. And my wife said, what? And I said, the Spurs won. And I was like, holy shit, I can't believe it. And then, like, you messaged me. My boss texted me. All kinds of stuff I saw pop up on Facebook when I went to the bathroom. And yeah, very, very exciting. I'm very serendipitous, I guess. This is the third time that the Spurs have won the number one draft pick. Mm-hmm. The first one yielded David Robinson. Second one yielded Tim Duncan. And now the best prospect in the last 20 years, Victor Wembanyama. I can't fucking say it. Wembanyama.
There you go.
There we go. Who you watched? You said you watched a French game today featuring him.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, I mean, this guy has been the prospective number one pick for years now. I mean, they've been following him for, I mean, I was hearing a report that the Spurs have been on him for like 5 years, and he's 19. Like, they've been aware of him for a very long time. And this was the year he was finally going. And so I've been kind of like not really diving too far deep into like, because like, for example, the NBA app this year streamed every single one of his games. And like they have commentators who are like watching and only talking about him, from like NBA.com and stuff. And so I haven't been dipping too much into it because I didn't want to get my hopes up. And I didn't want to like invest all this time and energy into, watching his stuff and then, having a dagger of a draft night.
To see him go to Houston or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a division rival.
Yeah. And so this morning I watched, it was his first playoff game in France today. So, and it was on at like 10 a.m. So I was like, why not? And I watched the entire game, but yeah, it was crazy. I mean, like watching the draft lottery live, it's one of those things where like, if you know enough about the lottery, you know that when you see teams with high percentages drop, that you're safe basically. So like the first domino to fall was seeing that the Spurs were not like 7th or 6th, which 7th was the lowest they could fall. And the next domino was when Detroit fell to 5 because they were the worst team in the NBA last year, but due to the changes of the flattening of the odds, they had us in Houston had the highest percentage chance of getting the pick.
Yeah, like 14% chance, something like that, right?
Yeah, 14%. So when Detroit fell, it was the top 4, and it was, the Spurs, the Rockets, the Hornets, and the Trailblazers, and then they went to commercial. And so, we know we're getting a top 4 pick, and it's crazy. And then finally, when Houston was, went down to 4, it was like, oh shit, because now this, another team with the highest odds ended up falling by a slot, and then it happened, and jumped off the couch, and actually I was standing for about an hour, so I didn't jump off the couch, but I yelled and stuff.
Yeah, our pal Kiko posted a video of himself losing his shit in his living room, which was great. There's a video out there of what bar was it that was going to pay everybody's tab if the Spurs won?
Oh, it was a bar called the Rue Pub here. It's
a pretty massive bar.
Yeah.
Sports bar. I was trying to remember. I may have told the story before, but when the Spurs got Tim Duncan, I was a senior in high school. I thought it was I swore I was out of high school, but it was like my last couple weeks of high school. And I remember it was a Sunday, and I was going back to work at Albertsons, and I was listening to it on the radio, and that's when I found out, the Spurs got the number 1 pick because they announced Boston, and I was like, oh shit. Yeah, it's one of those thrilling things that it's kind of crazy to experience. I wasn't really cognizant of the David Robinson one, but to have it like twice happen in my lifetime is a crazy feeling. And it's one of those things that, like, it's a different feeling than the Duncan one, because the Duncan one was like, oh shit, like this is an immediate bonus. And not that this pick, which officially, they haven't picked Wemby yet, but that's just NBA bullshit about not announcing who the pick is. But like clearly that's who's going to be the number 1 pick. Like there's like a rebuilding process still to happen. Because with Duncan, it was like, well, Robinson's coming back healthy.
Right.
You've got Sean Elliott. You've got this core that's already there, and you're just adding, the best power forward to ever play the game.
Yeah. Well, but that is an important note too. That like it's one thing to win the draft lottery in like swing and miss on like a Greg Oden or like an Anthony Bennett. Two players who did nothing. It's another for the Spurs to like people have pointed this out, but like when they got Robinson, that kept the team from moving. That kept them here. And then with Duncan, you have a playoff stretch of 22 years that you don't miss. And so it's not only that we won the lottery 3 times, but it's like in super consequential drafts where like
Yes.
you have a presumptive number 1 who like no doubt is going to be the number 1 pick, who is like, if everything goes the way that it's supposed to, like franchise altering player. Yeah. It's just crazy that it happened like this. And it's like, again, it's the year that the Spurs decide to tank. Like the past couple of years, they've been like a play-in team, right on the bubble or verge. And then this team, they finally pulled the trigger on unloading all of their big talent, and they tanked at the exact right time, and it ended up panning out. So much so that like you say that there's a rebuilding process, and there is, but now that you land this player, they probably just accelerated the rebuilding process by 3 or 4 years. Which also allows Pop to hang around for a full rebuild. Like, he's 74, but like, if he could easily stick around another 5 years. Yeah.
And, this is, perhaps a different mindset now. You have, this all around like sensation, this international sensation, coming to the Spurs, which has always been a destination for international players. And, with Manu and Tony, and then, others like, Fabricio Alberto, Boris Diaw, any number of other international players that have been on the Spurs. But here's like something that brings international attention on a scale unrivaled to any, I mean, probably since Yao Ming. Because I think the Chinese market has really never left Houston after Yao retired. But this is one of those things that I think could probably, it's going to vault the status of the Spurs up higher than they've been in a long time. And not that they were ever really counted out, but there was always a healthy sort of, what would you call it? Like a sort of no respect vibe that fans have always had. And I don't know if that changes. I mean, I assume this immediately sort of changes it.
Yeah.
And the idea that, and I think this is an inevitability, the idea that more of those games get played in Austin is probably a no-brainer at this point. Like, sure. I think I was telling you, and I was telling some other people, like, I can imagine the rodeo road trip becoming the Austin homestand. And then there's an editorial in the Express News about now's the time to push for a new arena, which seems fucking bonkers. But the AT&T Center is 20 years old at this point.
And it's in a terrible location.
That was something I was talking to my wife about, how it just never really developed.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've been to an NBA arena or even a baseball park or whatever that's in the heart of downtown that has things to do around it, it's such a different experience. I've never been to the American Airlines Center when it's open. That's what it's still called in Dallas, right? American Airlines Center.
Yeah.
But like it's clearly geared for that.
Yeah. Well, you even see like the interesting thing is that like there were a lot of media people talking about the lottery, and that obviously ESPN is going to be here all of the time next year, and in national media and probably TNT and Turner, and then international coverage with writers like beat writers and stuff, and they kept on talking about like how they can't wait for all of these media people to Uber to and from the arena, because if you're staying downtown or near the airport or anything like that, you're nowhere near the AT&T Center.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing is like that's naming this coming season, right? Being
I think
changed.
So, yeah.
That's the thing is like it's such a you're going like speaking of international media, like the international flights in and out of San Antonio are terrible compared to Austin, which is still crazy because it's so much smaller of an airport. But just the international crowd that's here already with stuff like, with the tech industry and F1 and now the MLS, it's going to be I think it's going to be a hard lesson for Spurs fans here, as I don't think they're leaving, but I think the time that they split between San Antonio and Austin is going to increase. I don't think they're leaving, but man, if I was still living in San Antonio and not living here, I'd be really worried that, I don't know. I mean, Austin's, it's not that far away, but still there's going to be an appeal there that's not in San Antonio, which is unfortunate. But the AT&T Center is in the middle of nowhere, and there's a golf course and a Coca-Cola bottling plant that have kept any sort of, development from happening, and that it's just a sea of parking in the Coliseum. Like, it was great when it started, and I don't know if you ever tried to go to any of the stuff that they tried to start up out there. Like George Gervin had a restaurant at the golf course across the street.
That. Yeah.
Just nothing ever stuck, so it's not a destination for anything.
Right.
It's not like going, like I think of recently I've been to Busch Stadium in St. Louis, like Ballpark Village, and I'm sure there's 10,000 other ones like that at every other, MLS stadium or MLB stadium that's in the middle of a city. It's a place to go. Like, you're going to go hang out down there.
Right.
It's all built for that. And then, anyway, good times ahead, I guess. Finally back. I can finally pay attention again, because I had really drifted off after I think you said it. It finally kind of made the Kawhi Leonard thing okay.
That's truly how I felt. It's something that I had not let go of for, the past, almost decade, really. And it's finally at a point where like that, all of that happening directly led to this in some way. So whatever.
And even like the Murray trade last year that everybody was kind of upset about, and he has some bad blood too, but I remember specifically, like, they gave away his bobblehead and then the next day traded him.
Yes.
Yeah. So good times. We'll see how much they're going to gouge me for tickets in Austin this year. Moving on. One more thing we wanted to talk about before we got to the rest of the show was, there's news coming out that from Disney Plus they're first going to combine their service with Hulu.
Right.
Which is, from what I understand, they're still going to remain two separate apps, and then they'll have some sort of hybrid model of that. But another thing, in a line of the trend of getting rid of content, Disney is pulling stuff from Disney Plus, presumably never to return, or to return in some sort of other fashion, ad supported maybe. You heard about this, obviously. The big one being Willow.
Yeah.
The TV series based on the movie. Sorry, my cat's on my lap. The TV series based on the movie that actually just finished up in January and is now being removed from the service. What are your thoughts on this? I know that you still buy physical media, and I do too. But what are your thoughts on this stuff that just sort of gets vanished forever?
Well, I mean, I think that alludes to the problem, right? Is that it would be one thing if this stuff was available on physical media, but it isn't. You know, it's exclusively streaming content, and in fact, you know, Netflix like just deliberately does not put out their releases on physical media for the most part, which, you know, it's like the idea that like they won't release it on physical media, but also apparently like living on the platform forever is not something that's going to happen, which to me, I don't I mean, I get that it's like a cost saving or a financial tax write-off or whatever the case might be, but the idea that something can just disappear from the ability to watch is crazy to me in this day and age. Like,
especially after we've been conditioned for it, to it for so long. Because I mean, that used to be in the 80s. It was like, oh, I missed Knight Rider. Well, I'll never see it again.
Sure. Yeah. But when you have places that like content theoretically could be stored indefinitely, and then it's just gone. It's just weird. And so they've got to come up with some kind of solution, or else all of this content is just going to disappear. And I don't think that creators are going to want to make stuff that might just like vanish off the face of the earth. You know, people who, you know, really work to create movies or TV shows where, you know, they're not giving the audience a chance to hold on to it in any way. I mean, you know, just the idea that they say, no, we won't release it on DVD, and then we're going to strip it from the service, like, and it's just gone. It's just crazy.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things that is really disheartening in this streaming era, and that's really sort of made me really disillusioned with wanting to continue it. So, you know, you pay for Spotify forever, right? You pay for a subscription. There's not the threat that stuff is going to go away. Right. Whether or not it's there, whether or not it's a song by an artist that no one's ever heard of, it exists there to be played whenever. You know, and they pay out notoriously small amounts. The idea that you're subscribing to Disney to get this content forever, and not just the movies, but these TV shows that are developed exclusively for Disney Plus, that they're just going to be vanished forever or pop up somewhere. I mean, in theory, I guess they could still pop up on something like Tubi or somewhere else ad supported, but it really is starting to leave a bad taste in my mouth for this thing. Because at least Netflix, as many problems as they have with like canceling shows after a season so you don't give a shit anymore, to my knowledge, they've never disappeared anything. Like the only thing that's gone is when they lose the rights to whatever they've licensed. Yeah. You know, the idea that these things can just be gone from this service where, you know, Disney Plus was sold to me as a service where all of this stuff was going to live forever. Like this was going to be where you went to watch The Simpsons forever, which I don't think is going anywhere. But where you'd be able to go watch the Marvel movies forever. Like, are the less successful Marvel movies going to disappear? Are these things that kind of bomb that no one cares about going to go away? And that's the I guess the question that's being asked, and it's a fair question, and I don't think they have a good answer for it. Mm-hmm. I did see Bryan Cranston tweeting about that gorilla movie he made, the one and only Ivan, that we didn't see. I don't think we talked about.
I don't even know what that is.
It's a movie that was released straight to Disney Plus, and it's going away too. So you're angering Emmy-winning, highly respected actors in this. What's going to convince them to come create content for you? And I feel like we're probably at the peak of content creation right now and on the downswing.
But also, like the whole attractive thing about streaming platforms is that they have a comprehensive library of archival content. Like that's why something like HBO Max, for example, is so or Max, as it will be in 2 days, is so valuable because they have like a treasure trove of old Warner Brothers stuff mixed in with, you know, all of the prestige HBO stuff and like,
well, not Westworld anymore.
Right. Yeah. And it's just such a weird thing to me that like you're taking away the thing that is also driving people to the service. presumably for tax purposes.
Yeah, well, I guess Willow is probably residuals, but if nobody watched it and nobody, like, it's not getting a second season, I don't quite understand the idea the idea of not leaving it there. Because if it bombed, it bombed, and no one's the residuals they pay out are going to be minuscule, I assume, in relatively speaking. But you've just increased the high profile. You've just increased its profile 10 times more than you ever did publicizing it. And who knows how much money was spent on it? All this IP that they own, but this is all. It doesn't look cheap when you watch Willow.
Right.
It's all been positioned as you buy Peacock, you subscribe to Peacock because you wanted to watch The Office, or you want to watch SNL. You subscribe to HBO Max because you want access to all the HBO content plus Friends. The Disney Plus is you want all the Disney content plus The Simpsons or whatever. If you start piecing that off, like, well, what's to keep me at Disney Plus other than the idea? Like, if I'm sick of the Star Wars stuff, if I didn't care about any of that stuff, and I know it can just go away at any time, then what the fuck am I sticking around for, man?
Yeah.
Like, this is the old Disney Vault shit where they used to do that. They would release a DVD and then lock it away, which I get. That makes sense because the DVD still exists in the world for you to go watch. But to take this stuff and just shunt it away and lock it away and do whatever to it, man, I don't understand this. Like, I mean, everybody went all in on streaming, and now it's biting in the ass, I guess. It's so disappointing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, anything else to add before we go, or before we move on?
I don't think so. It's just a frustrating thing, and I kind of feel for the people who have, stuff that they worked really hard on that, like, I'm sure under the impression that it would just be there forever, and that would, and I like it's pretty grim when you see people, putting out warnings to creators to say, like, hey, like, request a DVD of your show because, if they somehow, get rid of it, you may not have a copy of this thing that you made that was, available, worldwide, and then now it's pulled from everything.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and move on to reviews.
Here are this week's reviews.
This week we have Fast 10.
You remember my father? Hernandez. My father was a horrible man. Very bad daddy. But I kind of liked him, and you took him from me when you stole our money and left us with nothing but suffering. That's what I came here for. To end that suffering. Oh, and I didn't take that money. I burned it.
This is the 10th movie in the Fast and Furious saga, the 11th if you count Hobbs and Shaw, the spinoff. This is allegedly one of the parts of the finale.
Right.
Initially going to be 2 movies, now supposedly going to be 3. Hoo boy, Cody, tell us about Fast 10. What you thought of it?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's, we talked about this, I think, last week, where you had said that you had, like, seen every other movie in the franchise recently, for not like purposely, like you were skipping one, you were just doing a pattern, but that's just kind of the way that it sort of fleshed out. And so I hope you weren't stuck in your lore. I know that I don't know where you saw yours at, but I saw mine at Alamo Drafthouse, and they actually had a recap, like a 10-minute recap that was just, like, kind of funny and went through, like, each of the 9 previous movies of, like, the major points of what happened and stuff.
Yeah, we saw I was at the screening. Okay. So to be clear, my first one was Fast 5.
Oh,
which is still the high point, I think.
Sure.
Then I saw Furious 7, Fate of the Furious. I missed the 9th one, and then this one. So I've seen 4, or I've seen Hobbs and Shaw. So 5 of the 11.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think I get the gist.
Sure. But there are some things where if you did not see the last one are a little bit jarring here, like, like how John Cena goes from like the villain of the previous movie to now is just like suddenly on the team. But
it's kind of the whole MO of the thing is every bad guy becomes part of the team.
Well, yes, and I think just to get down into the logistics of it, what started off as and this isn't like new information, but what started off as a very simple, kind of like narrative that took place inside street racing and was about like Paul Walker's character was like I believe he was like a cop who went undercover in the street racing to. Because people were boosting DVD players or something like that. I think that's the plot of the first one.
Yeah.
And anyway, it was really entrenched in this street racing thing, and then like slowly evolved into being like around Fast Five as like a heist thing, and then kind of continued to build and up the sort of ridiculousness of it all. Got more complex, got bigger and dumber, and all this other stuff. And this is no exception. I mean, I think this series is like the king of retconning, and they can just retcon whatever they want to fit the story. And here, the big retcon is that the kind of heist that they pulled in Fast Five. The kind of the main villain had a son who was apparently just off screen the entire time of Fast Five, but was there the whole time, played by Jason Momoa. And
if you heard in that clip with varying degrees of a Brazilian accent.
It's there one scene and not there the next for sure. But and so he's essentially just out for revenge. And so the whole movie pretty much is just him, setting bigger and bigger traps for the crew, and the crew having to kind of like he kind of sets them up, which leads to sort of Michelle Rodriguez's character getting taken, and then they're kind of after Dom's family and son, and essentially it's just about Jason Momoa exacting revenge. And so, if you have seen any of these movies, I think pretty much what you're going to get. The action of it is ridiculous. The plotting of it makes little sense. There's just and I think it struggles with like having just so many characters. I mean, there are like it feels like maybe like 12 to 15 main like major characters who are all like part of the team, need enough screen time, need to go pair off or do other things. You have John Cena like in his own movie almost with Dom's son. And then you have like Michelle Rodriguez and Charlize Theron like off in their own little thing, and then you have and then Jason Momoa is just sort of like the presence throughout, and it's just so the whole theme of this franchise seems to be just like family, like that's the theme, and it's just so funny how like every major character they've introduced since Fast Five is just somehow connected to someone else in the series. Like you have Jason Statham ends up playing Luke Evans' brother, and then you find out that they have a mother who's Helen Mirren, and then you find out that John Cena is like Dom's lost brother that somehow was never mentioned or never brought up. And
Dom and Mia, don't forget Jordana Brewster, who's still hanging around for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean it just goes on and on. I mean Jason Momoa is playing the son of the boss, and then you have a new character here. Two new characters. One is the long lost sister of Elsa Pataki's character who died previously, and then finally you have Brie Larson entering the universe, who plays, of course, the daughter of Mr. Nobody. So like. With Kurt Russell's character. So like it literally just is like every new character that shows up, just assume that they're somehow related to someone else in the series, and then they're retconning their way into what happened. And so like I said, it follows a very similar formula, like death-defying, ridiculous, like Vin Diesel knocking over a crane by flying his car off a cliff bullshit. You have the same kind of like comedic relief that you get with like the ongoing, feud or shit talking between, Ludacris and Tyrese. But what I will say is that what this movie has that other movies haven't had is Jason Momoa, who makes this movie like infinitely more watchable than I think it has any right to be. Because anytime he's on screen, it is a gigantic performance, and it's something where like he's like at a level 10 all the time, and it's such in a way that I found like extremely entertaining. There's been a lot of comparisons I've seen, and I don't know how you feel about this, but there's a lot of like Cesar Romero Joker is what I'm seeing from a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I think people just wanted to use the Joker comparison. And I mean, Cesar Romero was just an old man who painted over his mustache to play the Joker. It's not really. Yeah. I don't see it as that.
Yeah.
Personally,
what it is though, it is kind of like he is like sort of like this sadistic character who is like kind of weird, like kind of like feminine in a lot of ways. And it's just kind of like crazy and also serves as like a kind of like a commentary of things that are going on. There's a lot of the things that I like the most is like there's a lot of really great reactionary things like asides, one-liners, non sequiturs, commenting on stuff that's going on in the movie, kind of stuff. I
would say, and there's a particular scene that makes me say this, a little more of a Jack Nicholson Joker, like Jack Nicholson Joker, but ramped up a little bit, like just sort of like unhinged and funny. Though, I mean, I have different opinions on that, but
yeah. And I think the humor of it really works. And I think that, I was deeply entertained at his performance. And again, it's not subtle at all. It is a giant performance. And I think that the thing that works about it is that it's what the franchise has been like dying for, which is some amount of self-awareness and some amount of levity that is beyond like the Tyrese and the ludicrous stuff. Because previously it's been the past 5 movies have been super serious with like some ridiculous like elements of them, and then like the comedic relief of Ludacris and Tyrese. And usually like backed by some like stupid music or whatever, like the jokes just can't land on them on their own. But here you get someone who like has a bit of self-awareness, because again, like, Vin Diesel treats this like it's like the most dramatic thing that's ever happened in the movie and has like no levity to it. And this just brings something that is just like over the top, ridiculous, goofy, legitimately funny. And it's just it's a nice break, because otherwise this would be just like overwhelmingly self-serious garbage, and it still is for a lot of it. It's not as if it changes the entire tone of the movie, but I will say that the movie suffers greatly when Jason Momoa is not on screen. There's a middle chunk where he's kind of off screen for a little while, and it really drags. But like, man, it's just like, oh, and also it's a break of like the machismo stuff that's like just so heavily peppered throughout this. Like, even, there's a scene that I really did not like at all, where Brie Larson shows up to go find Vin Diesel, and she like enters a bar. She's wearing like a leather jacket, and like she creates a scene and like beats up a couple of guys like looking for Dom, but he's just like sitting there the whole time. Like, couldn't you just go walk over and talk to him? Like,
man, I don't even remember that scene. There's so much to this that just blew past me. But
yeah. So, that being said, I mean, I think it falls victim to, again, the self-seriousness, ridiculous, over the top, furious, Fast and Furious franchise stuff. But it has a certain level of watchability that has been missing from the last few. Like, the last few movies for me felt like a total slog, and I did not have a good time at all. The presence of Momoa really brings about, something that I don't know that I can comfortably call good, and I wouldn't call good, but I would say it's certainly watchable.
Man, I disagree on the Momoa stuff. Like, I like Jason Momoa in general. I just felt like this one was too over the top, even for this movie. Like, I don't feel like it was any sort of like taking the piss out of it. it was no sort of commentary on the ridiculousness of it. The one character that does get to do that, and in a brief scene in a ridiculous like CGI set, is Alan Ritchson with Brie Larson, where they're like explaining like the premise of like everybody that's after Dom joining Dom's family. I feel like that was kind of the one inside joke. To me, the Momoa stuff feels a little almost like a gay panic offensive stuff to me.
Oh, see,
like
I don't think his character is gay. I don't
think he is either, but like he's playing this really like queer coded effeminate villain, which I mean, look, a lot of people seem to love it. It felt kind of like it was from 2005 to me.
See, the reason I disagree with that is because I do think that is a commentary on the machismo stuff.
Man, I don't think this movie is nearly that fucking smart. I disagree.
But there is that scene. Like, I mean, it's literally in the script where the scene where he's like painting the toenails of people. He literally says it's bringing much needed feminine energy to this.
But he's painting the toenails of corpses.
Right.
Like it's like a psychotic moment. It's not a. I don't feel like that's a bringing down the machismo of it personally.
But what about the line about bringing much needed feminine energy to the mix? Like, I mean, it's literally in there.
Sure, I get it, but I don't think the movie is. I think the movie's throwing that at the cheap seats to laugh. Like, I don't think the movie's...
I disagree with that, but that's
well, fine. Anyway, whatever. I'm not as big on Momoa as anything as everybody else seems to be. That's fine. I just still think this is some of the dumbest shit that's ever been on a screen, and it's fine. There's a moment of dumb that's fine, and there's a long time like Mystery Science Theater 3000 thing that they'll tell you like never show a good movie in the middle of your bad movie. And this movie starts out showing a good movie, which is Fast Five, in the middle of this bad movie. So you're constantly reminded of what I feel, and I think a lot of people would agree, is the series high point with Fast Five.
Yeah.
And it proceeds to bombard you with just stuff that's like calling back to it almost, like the bomb rolling through Rome. Which just becomes kind of tiresome at a point. And then the really tired stuff, like, man, fucking Ludacris could not look less interested in this at all. Like he's isolated with Tyrese, of course. And then Natalie Emmanuel and forgive me, I forget the actor's name, but Han, who apparently was the one that came back from the dead in the last movie because his death was a hologram.
The second person up until this movie to come back from the dead.
Sung Kang, sorry, is the actor's name. Anyway, so they have their own little adventure, and it's so fucking boring.
Yeah.
Until they stumble across Jason Statham, who is just doing his Jason Statham thing.
Did you see Hobbs and Shaw?
I did.
Okay.
I mean, it's fine. It's okay. Then they get to stumble into what is probably the worst scene in the entire movie, that features a celebrity cameo in the Universal, let's just say in the NBC Universal family, a very high-profile celebrity cameo in a scene that does nothing and goes on for seemingly 10 minutes. There's just so much of that shit in here. The self-seriousness of Vin Diesel, which I get, that's his thing. But then everybody else is entirely too serious in this role. Like the only person, like you said, that's having any fun, that looks like they're having any fun, is Momoa. And even like I said, I didn't care for it. This movie clearly has designs to be like an Infinity War style setup for something down the road. So be warned, you're getting half of a fucking movie, if that.
Yes.
And you're getting 2.5 hours of half of a fucking movie. And not only that, you're getting introduced to new characters. Daniela Melchior, I'm not sure how you say her name.
Was she from Suicide Squad?
She was in Suicide Squad. She was in Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 3. Anyway, she was Ratcatcher in Suicide Squad.
That's right.
Anyway, so you get you meet her and you get a long setup in the middle of this street race. You're like, well, shit, this is gonna go somewhere. This is gonna be some character development that I don't give a shit about. Oh, great, she's Dom's ex-lover's lost sister. Like, fuck me, man. And then the John Cena thing, like, that's the only one I actually kind of like, because I really like John Cena playing that goofball energy that he has.
But it is so off of what his character was.
Sure, and I haven't seen the movie before. I didn't see the last one, so I have no bearing on that. But I could tell watching it that shit, this is probably not what this character was introduced at.
No.
And then, like I mentioned, poor Jordana Brewster's still hanging around. Famously, Furious 7 retired the character of Brian, played by the late Paul Walker, who's been dead 10 years now. For whatever reason, the movie still keeps bringing him up. Like, why? My terrible theory is that he's going to be a digital resurrection in one of these next movies. Like, you're going to see Paul Walker's face again in one of these movies. Yeah. And that makes me really upset. Because you gave, like, Furious 7, I don't remember anything about that movie except for that send-off. Like, it's a great send-off for the character. Like, it's a touching moment. It's the exact way they should have done it.
Yes.
That you keep bringing up this fucking character's name.
Well, and it also, like, and I don't, not to get like too morbid about this, but just like you know, the manner in which Paul Walker died, like you're keeping the idea of him around when you're keeping his character around in this movie, and then throwing a bunch of like, you know, like crazy car shit into all of this. Like, you're not letting the audience let that go. It feels really I don't know, it feels uncomfortable that they continue to do this.
Yeah, and you know that he died in a fiery car crash, and there's numerous fiery car crashes. One that apparently claims the life of a character, but fuck you, I'll believe it when I see it. Kiss my ass. Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things that I don't quite get unless they're really willing to cross that bridge into bringing him back as a digital ghost, which I would not be happy with, because I'm never happy with that.
And there's really no reason why they would keep him relevant on screen for this long unless they weren't planning something like that, you know, like. But also too, there's no narrative reason. Like, you call attention to it. Like in this movie, I don't recall hearing anything about where his character is supposed to be.
He's just safe. There's one thing they say: he's safe. Like, Brian's safe.
But I think they might be talking about the younger Brian, like the kid.
No, because he was in the house with Vin Diesel when he says that. Like, he's upstairs.
Oh,
like, because they're asking like where's everybody at, and they talk about like how whatever the fuck Tyrese and Ludacris are in Rome, and everybody else is safe.
But the end of Fast 9 or whatever ends with like a car pulling up to the barbecue that's supposed to be his. So in this movie, it's like he's just, again, off screen. All this shit's happening and going down. His nephew is kidnapped.
His wife is babysitting the nephew while he's kidnapped, and he's just fucked off at home, like with their kids or whatever. Yeah, it's really gross to me.
Yeah, I agree with that completely.
Anyway, I mean, look, like I said, I feel like Fast 5 is the best of these movies. I feel like this is the worst. And
you need to see some of the others.
Maybe, but at least the idea that this isn't a full story is the kind of infuriating part. And I knew that's what we were getting. But like, man, this, like, you've stretched out like 45 minutes of material to 2.5 hours, and it's still not wrapped up. Like, there's still nothing here at play. Like, okay, so we're just waiting for Kurt Russell to show up. We're waiting for The Rock to show up, which he, spoiler alert, it's out there everywhere. He's in the end credits sequence. Mm-hmm. You get another character brought back from the dead. You could probably narrow it down to everybody that's died that's not a villain. Yeah. Which character comes back for no fucking reason whatsoever.
And they don't bother explaining it in the movie either. Like, it's just...
Hey, but that's the first post-credits stinger.
Yeah.
You've got Charlize Theron, who was a bad guy in the last two movies, and then...
Oh, you mean the one who literally murdered Vin Diesel's girlfriend, who is the mother of their kid, is now suddenly we're helping Michelle Rodriguez escape.
And let's not forget, Michelle Rodriguez came back from the dead.
Right.
Like 5 movies ago. Sung Kang's Han character was dead from like the Tokyo Drift, apparently killed by Jason Statham's characters.
It was retcon.
Oh my god!
Jason Statham, who of course now is helping them as well, even though he was the villain and then killed Han. Yeah.
Look, so with the character, with Alan Ritchson's character of Ames, that's the one character that maybe is the smart commentary element on kind of the ridiculousness of it in 2 separate scenes. Mm-hmm. That said, I don't think this is aiming for any sort of social commentary on like the femininity and the machismo of these movies. I don't believe that one bit. This is playing to the fucking, again, the cheap seats, which I get. That's what this whole thing has been. Like, I've said this before. Like, the one thing that separates this from those Michael Bay Transformers movies is like the terrible racist stereotypes that for some reason were inserted into a Transformers movie, but they're just as fucking stupid and they're just as fucking dumb. Mm-hmm. These just hit really harder for whatever reason with audiences. And I don't get it. I get certain elements of it, but man, it's just, these movies are such a slog for me.
Yeah.
Anyway, what is your grade for Fast 10, Cody?
Well, it's difficult to talk about these movies in terms of like recommendations because it's like if you haven't seen these movies before, you're not going to jump into the 10th one. And if you don't like these movies, there's no way you're getting to number 10 without having like not tapped out yet. And if you like these movies, you're in the can for it anyway. So like you're going to love it no matter what. That being said, it is definitely not the worst of the series. I mean, you should go watch the last one if you want a little bit. Like the last one is worse than this movie easily. F9, the Furious Saga or whatever the hell it's called. It's not the best of the series either, but like I said, it remains watchable as just like a popcorn movie with like a cartoonishly big and fun performance from Momoa, who quite honestly rescues the movie and salvages it to even being a watchable thing. It is a bad movie, but there are watchable parts to it. I'm going to give it a C+.
Man, I'm giving it a C-. I'm just not in the tank for these movies. And I have enjoyed elements of the past films. Like I said, I enjoyed Fast 5 a lot. I don't know that I could tell you any of the plot points other than they drag the safe through Rio de Janeiro. And, Furious 7, the Paul Walker send-off, I mean, probably one of the more heartfelt moments in a fucking dipshit movie series. But man, this one is just, this is a chore. These are a chore for me to sit through, and I can't recommend this at all. Unless you're all the way in, why would you watch this? But apparently a lot of people are all the way in.
Oh, sure.
Anyway, that's going to do it for this week. Next week, Cody, The Little Mermaid.
Yes.
Something I've already seen. You have yet to see. We're kind of in the era of the Disney remake. Not a terribly positive era, but
yeah,
we'll see what you think. Anyway, also we're going to cover a movie called You Hurt My Feelings.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my favorites out of Sundance from this year with with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. It's a Nicole Holofcener movie. They paired up again. I think for the first time since the movie Enough Said.
God, I still haven't watched that movie, and I need to because I love James Gandolfini.
Yeah. So I'm excited to talk about that. It's a really interesting movie, I think, and so. And then we've got some other like on the on the outside stuff that we may cover. There's some stuff opening. I think the most likely thing that we might cover would be The Machine, the Bert Kreischer story that he's been telling for a decade now.
Are you a fan of Bert Kreischer's stand-up?
Not really. No,
I'm not either. He seems like a fun guy, but he seems like a fun guy like from 2005.
Yeah,
I mean, isn't Van Wilder supposed to be based on him?
Is it?
That's what I heard.
Well, I don't know.
I've heard him say that, actually. Not that he looks like Ryan Reynolds, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of his stand-up either. But he seems like a very like I said, he'd be a lot to hang out with.
Yeah.
Anyway,
but I it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think the cast looks moderately interesting. I know Mark Hamill
plays his dad. Yeah.
And Jimmy Tatro, who I think is really funny, is playing the younger version of him. But I don't know. I guess we'll see. And I was trying to see if the director of that movie has made anything else, and it looks like he was a director on Key and Peele, and also directed Keanu, the Key and Peele movie.
Oh yeah, I don't remember. I remember really looking forward to that movie, and it sort of disappointing me.
Yeah, so we'll see. I'm not going to be able to make it, but they're doing some kind of like theatrical thing on Thursday where it's going to be like the movie and then like a 30-minute Bert Kreischer stand-up set as well.
I know he's about to go on tour. I've heard that too, which, yeah. Anyway, if you want to reach us, you can email us at podcast@cinesnob.net. Find us on Twitter @CineSnob, Facebook, CineSnobNet, YouTube.com/CineSnob. Cody, still doing the ramble?
Yeah, when I can. The ramble's still going on, regardless of whether I'm there or not. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Friday.
Just like life, man. Just like life.
Yeah, it's one of those things where our recording schedule gets bumped all of the time, and I'm always able to do it at some point, and then we get bumped, and I can't do it anymore. So,
well, the life of it's like Matt Damon on Jimmy Kimmel is always getting bumped.
Yes.
Is that a joke that's still happening? I don't know.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Have you seen that commercial, by the way, with for the NBA Finals? Just to go back to the NBA talk, where it's like a bunch of people getting nervous watching the finals. And for some reason, it's like it starts out with like Peyton and Eli Manning like watching the finals really earnestly, and then like Jimmy Kimmel like watching the finals like in his dressing room.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't get it. I mean, I guess they're just it's just the ABC stars.
ABC,
I guess.
Yeah.
Why are Peyton Manning and Eli Manning talking about the NBA Finals? Who cares?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just because they're one of the bigger personalities in the ESPN ABC family. So
I guess.
I don't know.
Anyway, all right. Anything else before we go?
No, I think that's it.
All right. On that note, I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Villafania.
Thank you for listening to the CineSnob Podcast. To read reviews, interviews, and more, visit cinesnob.net. See you next week.